morning, and thank you for joining us. Israel's rejection of the accord reached in Geneva by Iran and the 6 leading world nations over the weekend was swift. Prime Minister Netanyahu said the agreement is a historic mistake that leaves the world a much more dangerous place because the most dangerous regime in the world has taken a significant step toward attaining the most dangerous weapon. But it seems Israel is left as the odd man out at this point, and its options very limited for the next 6 months at least. We're joined in studio by civil activists for a free Middle East zone of weapons of mass destruction, Dr. Yehuda Atai. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And of course, by the Director of Arms Control and Regional Security Program at the INSS, Dr. Emily Landau. Good morning.
Good morning.
Emily, and before we delve into the subject, let's take a look at the following report.
Late last week, as the world powers and Iran have managed to reach a temporary, mid-stage deal in regards to the latter's nuclear program, Israel took a sharp stance against the agreement, stating it would not hinder the Iranian atomic project, but rather than the partial lifting of economic sanctions on the country would only help to advance it. But Israel has long stayed ambiguous on its own nuclear capabilities. The site most often mentioned in connection to Israel's nuclear status is the Nuclear Research Center in Dimona, widely alleged to be used for the manufacturing of nuclear weapons. According to reports and speculations, Israel has taken first steps towards developing a nuclear weapon as early as in the 50s and has developed 2 crude warheads around the time of the Six-Day War. Despite the continued Israeli policy of nuclear opacity, information leaked in 1986 by Mordechai Vanunu, the atomic whistleblower, who worked as a technician at the Dimona Center, stated Israel has a nuclear arsenal of up to 200 warheads. As the first major step in the diplomatic efforts to denuclearize Iran was taken, a greater question seems to loom in the horizon: the issue of a denuclearized Middle East. Being the first country to introduce the atomic question to the region, could Israeli concessions on its own nuclear capacities change the balance of power?
Now, Dr. Atai, you are a vocal, supporter of the agreement recently signed in Geneva, as far as we understand. But in many ways, putting aside the fact that, according to foreign reports, Israel has the same capability, doesn't this actually lead into a nuclear arms race in the Middle East?
No, I think that this agreement gives us a lot of hope, taking the Middle East in the direction of developing a free Middle East zone of weapons of mass destruction. I think that this agreement essentially allows the superpowers and Israel, it's in Israel's interest, in my opinion, in terms of the security of Israel, to continue a dialogue process in developing a free zone area.
But, okay, Dr. Emily Landau, in that respect, let's touch on that for a second. If we are to trust Iran, and I'm assuming that, you would be of the persuasion of saying that we can't trust them yet, correct? Is this something that, how does this lead to a free weapons of mass destruction Middle East?
Well, as far as trust is concerned, we have a history of 10 years of negotiations with Iran. There's a lot we know about the Iranian nuclear program. They have hidden their military program for years. According to all intelligence estimates, they were working on it at least for about 20 years and are probably continuing till today. So trust is not something that I think comes into the equation when we talk about Iran's nuclear program, really. And this first deal in Geneva is just an interim deal. Even according to President Obama, this is not more than allowing more time on the clock, as the administration put it, giving the P5+1 the time they need to negotiate the comprehensive deal, which is the only deal that we really need to focus on, without enabling Iran to advance its program. So this is a far cry from the deal that the international community is looking for with Iran. So I wouldn't put too much, into this agreement, or the implications of this agreement are just to give time for the comprehensive negotiations.
But it is a step that seems to very much scare the Israeli administration.
Well, the Israeli administration is fearful that this interim agreement is going to turn into a kind of permanent agreement. I would say that's the number one fear. And I have to say, I mean, over the past weeks, we have been hearing that it's just to give, the 6-month period to negotiate the final deal. Now we see in the terms of the interim deal that they're actually saying this 6-month period can be extended for another 6 months. And we just heard the British Foreign Secretary saying that he hopes there will be a comprehensive deal within a year. So, within the space of several weeks, the 6 months have turned into a year, and that could turn into a year and a half, et cetera, and I think this is what what Netanyahu is fearful of, because this interim deal is, nowhere near the deal that needs to be reached with Iran.
Again, according to the Israeli administration. But what should Israel do in that respect? Because, it is no secret, and according to foreign reports, as we always tend to say, that Israel is trying to prevent Iran from reaching the capability that it actually has. So is that the right way to pursue that? Or does it even have an international stake or claim to say that if, it does not sign certain treaties, international treaties, that it demands Iran to sign?
People are always very quick to draw, an equation between states when you're talking about WMD. But do people think about that same equation when it comes to state behavior in the region towards their own citizens, et cetera, et cetera? When we look at record of behavior for Israel, which has been an assumed nuclear state for over 40 years, it's a record of responsibility, of restraint, of being very low-key, never issuing a nuclear threat. Those are all things that matter. Iran, on the other hand, has been cheating and deceiving the international community for years about its intentions. It joined the NPT, made an explicit commitment to remain non-nuclear, and has been deceiving the international community. Israel opted to stay out of the NPT, probably because it had other things in mind. But those things matter. Iran right now is threatening Israel specifically. It says, the leaders of this regime say over and over and over again, Israel has no place in the Middle East. You will never hear similar rhetoric coming from Israel. So when we look at the situation, everything needs to be taken into account, not just the WMD or suspected WMD.
But in that respect, then, Dr. Atai, isn't the ambiguous nature that Israel treats its assumed nuclear capability actually the responsible thing to do, given what Dr. Landau just said, that it doesn't wag its finger at the rest of the region?
Well, I think that there is no way, if one's look at Iran's capabilities, and Iran is a country, and I'm watching Iran for the past 15 years, and I even said it at 2004 at the Center of Strategic Studies in Haifa. If Iran wants to have a nuclear weapons, I don't think anyone can stop her. Unless you really physically conquer Iran. You cannot do it by airstrikes. Even if you bomb Iran, you cannot do it. You cannot stop her completely. You may halt Iran, but you cannot stop it. Today, you can make a nuclear bomb without a nuclear reactor. And Iran has the knowledge. And if Iran wants to make such a weapon, Iran, in my opinion, can do it.
So what is good about the agreement that has just been signed?
That's a good question. I think that that agreement increases the amount of control and surveillance of the international community over Iran's activity as it is. Okay, that agreement allows an opportunity for states in the region, in the Middle East, to advance one step further into a demilitarized zone of weapons of mass destruction. We can see it in Syria. Emily itself knows that my opinion about the chemical weapons, and they are as dangerous. Three major bombs, chemical bombs, can kill thousands, if not 10,000s of people. It's like a mini Hiroshima. Israel never deter the countries around her from developing weapons of mass destruction with her so-called nuclear capabilities.
No, but now that, this agreement has been signed, Israel is wagging its finger, and Saudi Arabia is basically gesturing or hinting that it's going to, if need be, acquire nuclear weapons from Pakistan. So isn't this doing the counter effect?
No, I don't think so. I think that in Israel, since there are no real ways to, in my opinion, to stop Iran from developing these weapons unless it's being conquered, Israel can point the fingers and can increase international pressures on the super powerful nation to increase pressure on Iran. However, putting increased pressure on Iran can also derail the process within the Iranian community into action or activities which will not be rational in the area. So in my opinion, that agreement really relieves the pressure, gives time to all sides, and it is in the interest of Israel that this process will continue. See what happened in Syria. Just 3 months ago, everyone in Israel was totally upset with the fact that President Obama didn't attack Syria, finding that they crossed the red line. And everybody was very eager to see some kind of a military attack. Now, military attack on the chemical depots in Syria will not clean the area. Matter of fact, would create a horrendous disaster and mini Holocaust on the part of the Syrian society. The only way to dismantle the chemical weapons in Syria was to be in the ground and dismantling the bombs and diffusing the chemical weapons, and it has been done with the agreement, a careful agreement that has been done between the US and Russia. Russia can do it.
But so here's the question, Emily. Is this actually a rational solution? Can the area be demilitarized and actually, broken up from its weapons of mass destruction? That's something that can happen.
Well, first of all, what brought Syria to the point where they joined the CWC is exactly pressure. It was the pressure of the threat of military force on the part of the Obama administration. They were threatening to attack. The Russians and the Iranians and the Syrians probably assumed that even if this went to Congress and Congress gave a red light, there was still, a good chance that Obama might strike. And I think there was a real fear that even this kind of targeted, limited strike could, cause such an upset in Syria that Assad's continued regime would be in danger. And therefore, the Russians stepped forward and said to Assad, most likely, you better sign the CWC, otherwise your regime is in danger. So what do we learn from the Syrian case? Pressure works. And here I would, say in reaction to what was said here about the pressure in Iran and that too much pressure can give the opposite. These arguments have been put forward every time the international community is ahead of a new set of sanctions. We heard it in late 2011 with regard to the biting sanctions. Commentators saying, don't go for those sanctions. You're going to press Iran too far. They'll go crazy. They'll exit the NPT. They'll make a rush for the bomb. And what did we see? Those biting sanctions were put in place, and they're the only reason that the Iranians are right now back at the table. Again, the lesson for the international community is pressure works. And just a final word on the fact that, they always have the knowledge, and therefore you can't stop it. I find this argument very unconvincing. Right. Because the fact that you have the knowledge, we know, everyone has the knowledge, there's knowledge on the internet. That's not a valid argument for saying we can't stop Iran. You can still Assad also has the knowledge, but we all agree that he's basically been stopped because the interests are such that he's probably going to uphold the CWC. He has the knowledge. Why doesn't anybody say, this Syrian deal is not worth the paper it's written on because Assad has the knowledge and he can go back to it? Nobody says that. So why with regard to Iran? Having the knowledge is not the point. The point is that Iran comes to the table because of massive pressure and makes the comprehensive deal that the international community feels satisfied with that will mean they have backed down from their ambitions.
Now, Dr. Atai, really quickly, why then trust Iran with all those, as Emily Landau just says, Dr. Landau just said, everybody has the knowledge. Why trust Iran that it's trying to pursue it?
It's not a matter of trust or not trusting Iran. It's a matter of reality and real politics, in a sense that you have to have a cooperation with Iran in order to dismantle its any kind of military program that they have in mind. And if you don't have the cooperation with Iran, then you can put sanctions, you can put pressures, you can put infinite pressure like the West did, not for the past 10 years, but for the past 30 years, since 1979. I'm not protecting Iran, but Iran is under heavy isolation from the world. They cannot even buy proper fuel within their own country. So, in my opinion, the negotiation approach is the most effective approach.
Sadly, as you said, sadly, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us. When we come back, Prime Minister Shinawatra in Thailand implements an emergency law after demonstrators occupy ministries in an effort to remove her from power. First, though, let's go back to the headlines.